This video was recorded in front of a live virtual audience.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Fashion Bunker. Dacob here. Today we are traveling into the future, but also to futures past. We will be reviewing Lulu and Lulu. They are different. Before we get to it, I would like to thank my subscribers for subscribing to my channel. If you haven't already, click that subscription button and the notifications bell to get to see all the videos as they get uploaded. But also, I would like to thank my members for joining my YouTube channel. You can become a member today. Push the join button. Also, I would like to thank my patrons, superdacob all spelled together on Patreon. Welcome to the future, you guys. This video is filmed in front of a virtual live studio audience, meaning that I have my wonderful viewers in the chat already ready because they know that we are reviewing Lulu. So we are going to get straight into it. We're going to spray it. I have the two Lulus. Why did I say that? Because we got the vintage Lulu from the 80s and we have the modern version Lulu of yesteryear, literally 2019, I think this batch is. See the difference in the blue hues? This vintage glass is completely blue. It's a colored blue glass. This glass is transparent. It has just been spray painted in blue to save money. That's the modern release of Lulu. So it also feels different to the touch. Let me explain to you the little video that I shot early fall this year that you've seen at the beginning of this review video. That was a bottle of Lulu flying in space with the sounds of Alien. I was very inspired by H.R. Giger's Alien, and Lulu the bottle is like a spaceship. It's like an 80s spaceship to me. The shape of the perfumes of the eau de parfum spray bottle is very reminiscent of Star Wars spaceships, or any really spaceship from that era. It's kind of reminiscent of what we have learned stylistically from the late 60s with Space Age, and then implemented them in the 80s. It also has something very Tron reminiscent. So when I made this video, little tiny short video that you saw at the beginning of this review, I made it for Instagram, and from my Instagram profile, superdacob all spelled together. You could check that out too. And my caption was Quadrant 55, Sector 19, Tuberose Galaxy, date 19081883. Everything is written for a reason, you guys. Lulu is a synthetic alien child cloned on another planet in a galaxy far, far away, where only a memory lingers on of what earthly delights used to smell like. Many eons ago, olfactive memories of planet Earth were transported on a spaceship to a faraway galaxy, as humans, with their greed, destroyed whatever life was left on Earth. Androids would clone the olfactive memories to preserve olfactive memories. Today, one alien steals a spaceship and breaks free from the android planet on a quest to find what remains of Earth. Lulu is navigating that spaceship. Lulu is on board of this spaceship. While it is true that in space no one can hear you scream, it is also true that everybody can smell your scent. Would you follow the adventures of Lulu if it were made into a retro 80s style TV series? The story, concept, and video idea by yours truly. So that's the idea. that I get smelling Lulu, the modern version of it. So I'm going to spray here the current formulation of Lulu. I'm going to give it 2 spritzes. And right away, we're going to take the 50 ml OG version of the Eau de Parfum and spray it here. Oof, child, they're intense. Lulu, to me, is a vision of the past and the future, meaning, as I described in my text, whenever I smell Lulu, I smell humanity that has been dislocated or taken out of its own context, taken somewhere else to another planet, because planet Earth, the life on it was made impossible due to our greed, due to overconsumption, due to all the gases, the fumes, pollution. So many, many eons later, no more humans are on planet Earth. So what did planet Earth manage to heal itself, to cleanse itself? We do not know, because we have this Lulu, which we're not so sure if it's an android or not, on the spaceship, escaping this planet from which Lulu was not really captive. So, but Lulu learned about planet Earth, and Lulu holds the olfactive memory of smell, of what perfumes used to be, of what smell used to be. And Lulu wants to find the original source of all of these smells, right? And the original source is on planet Earth because the flowers and the ingredients used to grow there. So Lulu tries to fly back to Earth to figure out if there's anything left on planet Earth. So why am I talking about olfactive memory rather than the actual perfume itself? Because today's formulation, we have here a 30 ml concentration of Lulu, is like that memory of what Lulu used to be. So we have the current Lulu traveling back in time, or trying to find the way back to planet Earth to try to figure out where the original Lulu is that has been modified in the future. These are quite distinct fragrances from one another, even though we recognize the DNA of Lulu in both of them. The current formulation is way more floral and light, synthetic. They're both synthetic. This is a child of the 80s, 1987. 6/7 was the release date of Lulu. So it's a synthetic child. However, the current formulation is more of a floral synthetic child. The 80s formulation is a more heavy, powdery, plummy synthetic. The ingredients of Lulu, I'm gonna list them to you. They're listed as same ingredients for both, even though we know to our nose they don't smell the same. But anyway, let's get to the ingredients quickly. Top notes: plum, Chinese cinnamon wood, iris, violet, anise, jasmine or yasmin, lily, mimosa, cassia or cassis. Then we got middle notes: tuberose, ylang-ylang, heliotrope, orris root, orange blossom, Tahitian tiare flower. Then we got base notes: incense, vanilla, benzoin, sandalwood, musks. One of the top selling perfumes of the 80s, one of those bold, powerful, distinguishing, and timeless fragrances. Lulu is a controversial perfume that people either like or dislike. The one that evokes different emotions and indifference for sure. The one that evokes different emotions and indifference for sure is not one of them. This is so weird. Somebody. 1987, Jean Guichat is the nose behind Lulu, the same nose behind Obsession and Eden, or Eden by Cacharel. This sensual, wild, and mysterious perfume is captured in an opaque blue and red flacon of a simple octagonal. Well, we're going to get to the octagonal. And straight-lined shape that narrows towards the top. An earlier version of the bottle was designed like Aladdin's lamp with a blue octagonal base and a red spiky top. let's get to this. Fragrantica, which I was reading from here, doesn't get their facts always right. Sorry, Fragrantica, I love you, but anyway, let's be very clear about this. This is the spray bottle of Lulu. Okay? It came out the same year as the so-called octagonal / Aladdin's bottle, Genie's bottle, Splash bottle. They both came out at the same time. It's just that that Genie bottle, let's just call it the Genie bottle, was much more popular. I don't know, it kind of harpooned itself more into the memory of people. So when you think about Lulu today, you always envision that particular shape more than this one. But they both came out at the same time, the Splash and the spray bottles. What has survived today are the spray bottles. They have been altered. Now they're just spray painted to save money rather than purchasing fully colored through blue glass. But nevertheless, this bottle is from that same year as the Genie bottle. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is, how would you call it? It's not an octagonal, it's a, is that a dodecagonal shape? Because first you think it just has 6 sides, the bottle, but it actually has also separate little hidden, almost to the eye, flat bits on the bottle as well. So in fact, we have 12 sides to this. You see it, how it reflects? There it is. That little one spiky bit shows right there. It's highlighted. There you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes all the way to 12. The original formulation came out just a couple of years after Christian Dior's Poison came out. And in fact, we smell that in the fragrance. The plum and the tuberose in Lulu are mimicking the plum and the tuberose from Poison. Now, Poison, on top of the plum and the tuberose, has this wonderfully complex opoponax, which is masterfully used in Poison. There is no opoponax in Lulu, which lightens the creation. Lulu is the original now, the 80s concentration, or the 80s formulation, is much powderier, lighter fragrance than Poison is. Mind you, Poison is a resinousy, it's smoky too, but it's a resinousy, plummy, dark, ambery tuberose concoction that goes really deep and scratchy in a way. Lulu is lighter. Lulu is more floral, but still very, 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 very powdery in its own way. It just doesn't go into that opoponax, resinousy, balmy type of direction. It stays more ethereal, if you may. Still very heavy. Lulu is a heavy hitter. I mean, the original formulation of Lulu is a very, very heavy hitter. And the top notes, I mean, here they're telling us, I don't get the plum immediately, but what I do get is the iris, the violet, the anise, the jasmine, the lily, the mimosa. Mimosa is a very powdery ingredient, and it's quite heavy. I don't want to say heavy. It's quite opulent in the opening of Lulu. Ilang Ilang in the original has a restrained texture. Ilang Ilang is a buttery smell. It doesn't get really its spotlight to shine as much as it could, because Ilang Ilang does have a tendency of taking over if you don't dose it right. But in a good way. I mean, I like an overdose of Ilang Ilang, but it doesn't really penetrate through in its full powdery, in its full butteriness, because of that enormous amount of iris, violet, and orris root that just keep kind of vacuuming away the butteriness, and they just push onto it the powdery note, the powder, the dry powder aspect of this fragrance in the original formulation. So you get these dark, spicy, plummy notes, but they're dry, very dry on me. And what trickles through, and this is a very similar note that we often get in Hypnotic Poison, which came out in the 90s, the Eau de Toilette, there's a play-doh note in there. And the play-doh note comes from this particular blend that they use of vanilla, benzoin, and musk. There's this play-dohy, like when you inhale the perfume and then you kind of exhale it, and that olfactive, in the palate somewhere there, you get that hint of, it's almost like an almondy, play-dohy touch, which is completely gone in the new formulation. The current formulation of Lulu, which is what I think most of you have that are now testing it with me in the chat live as I'm reviewing it. The current formulation of Lulu is really made for modern times. It is a memory of what the 80s were. It is also a memory of what Lulu was, but done in a very, very clever way. Now, I know that L'Oréal, who own CACHAREL, Lulu, by the way, is by CACHAREL, but L'Oréal is the manufacturer and the owner of CACHAREL fragrances. So since Lulu doesn't sell en masse as other fragrances, you know, it has been toned down. They cheapened out on the bottle quality. And of course, they try to find ingredients to maximize profits, because it is considered a cheapie nowadays. You can find it for a relatively low cost, Lulu. I will put a link in the description box under this video to my Amazon affiliates link, so you could buy it through there. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does help the channel. It is a wonderfully, and I do not believe that L'Oréal did this on purpose. I think it's a coincidence. They just got cheaper ingredients to substitute them for the more precious ingredients that used to be in Lulu. But by cheapening this one, they've done it a world of good. This is one of those rare instances, rare instances where reformulation is wonderful, perhaps even slightly better than the original, because envision it this way. Lulu is like this marble stone. It's just taken out of the excavation site. And then Michelangelo needs to come by and start to chip off at it to all the rough edges and kind of shape it and polish it into a wonderful, polished, rounded, organic looking sculpture. Not in such a perfect way as Michelangelo would do, but L'Oréal did Lulu this sort of plastic surgery, if you may. They've lifted her in the right spots. They cut off excess skin in other spots. They did what they made her suited to 2020, or I mean to the 20s in general, to the 10s, because I think this formulation was already available in the late 10s. And it is like a softer version of Lulu, minus the plum, minus the dry orris root edge with that play-dohy musk benzoin note in it. Now it's more tuberose. You can actually sense out the tuberose in this one. In the 80s version, it was rougher. It was much more rough. Now you smell out the flowers. It's less dark. Lulu is enlightened. The modern day Lulu is lighthearted in a way. You know, she could just jump into a spaceship from her planet, even though all of her elders said, don't do it, it's dangerous. She's still gonna do it because she wants to experiment, experience new things in life. She wants to find out where her ancestors come from. She wants to see how is planet Earth now. She has that light heart. She doesn't really care about the potential dangers out there that might happen, that might influence her, that might be hazardous to her and cause danger and, you know, potential, I mean, menacing situations don't bother her. That's Lulu, very lighthearted, with wonderful memories of the past, no bad memories of the past. Like, she managed to cancel all the negative, remembers just the positive, and elevates those positive memories. That's Lulu, modern day formulation. And of course, very reminiscent of the 80s. It is a memory of the 80s. One of the most beautiful current day. And again, I repeat, I do not believe L'Oreal thought so far. I do not think that they have this poetic vision. I think they only think about money, honestly. So for me to see so much into this is probably because I'm crazy too. But I see so much into this because it moves me. And if a perfume moves me, then I'm going to share it with you. The modern day formulation of Lulu, again, L'Oreal probably did not even think about this. Well, they got lucky because it works in their favor. It's like a poetic vision of the 80s, taking only the positive aspects, taking only the fun aspects, taking only what we dreamt about, you know, or what we dream about when we watch 80s movies, the 80s style, the look. You know, when you go through fashion magazines from the 80s, I mean, there was just a different type of joie de vivre, you know, this kind of happiness of life. And politically speaking, there was a lot of tension, of course. The Cold War was going on. I mean, there was a lot of things that were not good in the world, but there was nevertheless this will to fight and to make the world a better place for oneself. For others, maybe a bit less. The 80s were quite egotistical years. It was a decade full of self-pleasure, I would say. And the current formulation of Lulu reminds us of all of that, without it being all of that. You see, the modern day Lulu is not the 80s. The modern day Lulu tells us this is what the 80s were. Smell it. It's a faint memory of them, but it's a beautifully, delicately combined, composed memory. Very poetic, very poetic. So L'Oreal, you didn't think you thought you were pulling a trick on us by making us pay for a perfume that doesn't really smell anymore like it used to smell, like you're cheaping out. Yeah, but it worked in your favor in this case because it's really beautiful. Now, back to the OG. For better or for worse, even though they're both synthetic, OG and the modern day, it still has more of a natural touch to it. It is quite niche, you guys. Both versions of it, the current formulation and the vintage, they have a niche quality to them. I would even dare push it so far to tell you that the niche perfume purists out there are going to be like, blasphemy. Well, shoot me. It could be a zoologist perfume. The original Lulu has that cave smell, almost like, you know, bat. But bat, I reviewed bat, by the way, on my channel. You could check that review out too. I reviewed the first formulation of bat. Now, Lulu is not that conceptual. It doesn't go that far, but it does have a cave vibe to it. It has something primordial about it, something very dark and menacing about it. Lulu has a tone, the original Lulu has a powdery opulence that you would smell if you would drop powder inside of a closed environment and no more oxygen is coming in to breathe. So you are inhaling that powder. So it suffocates, you know, of course, in the most beautiful way, because it is a fragrance and it is made to be felt in an abandonment of ways. Now, what does this mean? Let's rewind back to the 80s for a second, shall we? Why do we complain so much about the fact that perfumes today are so much more watered down than they used to be in the past, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until the mid-90s? Well, there's many reasons for that, but one big reason that not many people tend to talk about is that, well, in the 80s, you could smoke everywhere. Parties were going on everywhere. You could smoke on airplanes, at the doctor's office, at work, in the offices. You could smoke anywhere, in buses, clubs, bars, restaurants. And people would drink more, people would party more. Things would cost less too. All of these weird products, cigarettes were much cheaper than they are today. Now, envision yourself going out on the weekend and you want to party and you take your perfume, you spray your perfume. Perfumes needed to be, back in the day, strong enough so that they could counter, so that they can still sustain themselves, still be smelled in a very smoky environment where, first of all, smoke numbs your senses. Alcohol numbs your senses. The 80s were also very popular for other substances. Those substances too numb your senses. With all these senses, olfactive smelling senses numbed down, you still needed to be able to smell the perfume. Smoke, cigarettes, tobacco, it was in the air. You lived with it. It was everywhere. It was in the homes. It was out on the streets. So it was a normal part of life. Coco Chanel always smoked a cigarette while she was making her clothes and dresses. In the boutiques, you could smoke. So Nick could... Oh, super chat. Thank you, Robert. Sorry, I'm not following because I'm like, thank you, Robert, so much. Thank you. So you could imagine that this is the vision that we have in the 80s of, not just in the 80s, also, of course, in the 70s, but since Lulu came out in the 80s, I'm talking specifically about the 80s, of a fragrance needing to be smellable despite the surrounding environment. And so perfumes needed to be powerful. Perfumes needed to be a bit more menacing because they needed that presence. That's why Opium is an incredible fragrance, because it came out of the disco era. It needed to be smellable despite everything else going around it. So nowadays, you're not allowed to smoke anywhere. The smells are reduced to the minimum. We have this kind of fashion of things will change again. This whole Zen approach to existence is going to change. Right now, it's all about, shh, don't talk too loud in the office. Don't annoy your colleague. You're too loud when you stand up to go make the coffee. Shh. Don't speak. Don't have a character. Don't have your individual, whoever you are. Just don't exist. Do your job and just as a worker, you have to exist by not existing for others. Just do your job and don't interact with anybody. Like, that's the culture we're in right now. So perfumes reflect that as well. So it's not just that the brands want to cheap out on us and trick us by watering down fragrances. Yeah, they do that too, but it also has a lot to do with the culture we're in, the society we're in right now. Society just has no character. It's bloodless. Society nowadays is as boring as it gets, you guys. If it gets more boring than that, it's going to be just like with Yoda. I love the meme that's going out on the internets these days. There's a photo of Yoda dying in his deathbed on Dagobah, the Dacob system. And the meme says, well, for those of you who don't know, I mean, Yoda died in his hut and Luke Skywalker was with him when Yoda became this ghost spirit or spirit ghost. Anyway, so now the meme is Yoda's dying on his bed and it says, like, if you're a parent and your kid is like, now that I'm a parent, I understand why Yoda just fell and died, because of all the questions Luke was asking him. Like, now that I'm a parent and my kid is asking me all these questions constantly, I just want to be like Yoda, just like decide to disappear. This decision to disappear, it's kind of like weirdly projected to today's society where you're not supposed to exist, really. And if you do show character, it's not good for you. It's not good for your job. It's not good for progressing in society, because if you have an opinion, heaven forbid you had an opinion, you will not be liked in the work environment. And they don't like to hear the truth. They just want everything to flow without any complications. They don't want anybody to ever, and even in corporate environments where they tell you, no, give us always feedback. Of course we want feedback. That's what helps us grow. It doesn't. The second you give feedback, constructive criticism, mind you, I'm not talking about non-constructive criticism. The second you give a feedback, even though they have to tell you that they want the feedback, they're going to hate you. They're going to cut your legs off. The second that you give them feedback about changing the system, heaven forbid you were to change the system. Perfumes in the 80s were changing the system. Lulu is a system changer. It took Poison, it took the 80s. We're going towards the end of the 80s, and it added other textures, other layers to it. 50s, 40s reminiscence in the vision of Lulu. The color of the bottle also helps us envision blue and red hues. Particularly this red, it's blood red. It's a very dark red. It makes you feel like you're traveling again into time somehow. It's like, but then again, don't forget, the 80s were full of references. The 80s weren't just innovation. The 80s took inspiration from all the decades past and made it their own. That's what the clash of the 80s is all about. There was a very, very big 40s influence in the 80s, 30s influence in the 80s, 50s influence in the 80s. All of those things flowed in together to create the 80s look, really. So Lulu is a perfect example of that. All the decades past brought together into one bottle, including just a couple of years past, because Poison is in here as well. The dry down does become a bit more balmy in terms of the flowers do get a chance to shimmer through on top, from underneath these resins, the musk, the orris root, iris, violet, I mean, I know the violet is a flower, but the violet to me is a powder, really. So if we're going to talk florals, there's not many here, you guys. It's not, I mean, yeah, they call it, ilang ilang, but ilang ilang is a buttery smell. Maybe the ilang ilang shines through a little bit now that the powder is slowly toning down, but nevertheless, Lulu until the very bitter end remains powdery. She remains purpley blue red colored tone. That's kind of the smell of it. And then it goes into that perhaps plum ilang ilang note later on, but the benzoin, the musk, the orris root, the violet, they dominate. The tuberose, to me, the tuberose, just like in Poison, I know a lot of you say, oh, Poison is all about tuberose. To me, Poison, it doesn't scream tuberose. Neither does the original Lulu. However, the modern day Lulu has that tuberose. It gives it a moment to shine. It's a synthetic tuberose, but it's a tuberose. And it's sparkly. It's almost like there's aldehydes in the new one, and the old one doesn't go for the aldehyde. The old one is more carnal. The original formulation has something fleshy about it. It's like flesh. Envision, just visually, not smell-wise, the rotting, what's it called, the plant that smells of a carcass, the carcass plant. It's a vile-looking, huge plant, and it has this vile odor. Now, forget the odor, but just envision the plant, that visual, but add a nice smell to it. That's what Lulu is. It's a weird contradiction. It has that carnal, slight smell of decay in it, in the OG formulation. None of it is present in the current. The dry down of the original goes into rotting flowers. The new one stays soft, slightly delicately powdery, but a very light floral and tuberose heavy. And it jumps up there in the surface, but beautifully jumps in the surface. It's still very niche for today's day and age in the world that I just mentioned before, where perfumes don't really have character. The modern day version of Lulu has a lot of character. For today's standards, this one is really it's a powerhouse. It still is nowadays, even though it's a cheapie. And It's so delicately and synthetically with its little shoulder pads, bounces around your shoulders, and it's almost fresh, almost citrusy in a way in its powdery nature, modern day Lulu. Its counterpart from the 80s, as it dries down, it starts talking. It starts telling you stories. It starts moaning, screaming. It's a drama queen. It does the, the, oh, woe is me, and oh, why did you do this to me? And it throws plates at you, and then it cries, and it says, get out of my house, I never want to see you again. And then you say, okay, F off, I'm leaving. And then like you go to the door, and then Lulu jumps, no, don't leave me. Why are you leaving me? That's Lulu, the 80s Lulu. It's pure drama at its finest, at its finest. It's a very conceptual perfume. And this relationship, this sick relationship that happens between like leaving and coming back, and it's an abusive relationship in a way, and it consumes your soul. You smell that out. It rots delicately, but in a very poetic way. And that rotting note to the dry down of the original Lulu is masterful, but you can't handle it every day. You just can't. Because, it's beautiful in its poetry. It really is. But it's kind of a burden to carry every day. While the modern day Lulu, none of that. No more drama. The modern day Lulu has learned from her mistakes. She has learned to deal with herself. She's more in balance with herself. And she also has learned to deal with whatever lovers come into her life. She has learned to give and to take when something is given, flow. More balanced. It's a more balanced relationship, the modern day Lulu with modern day times. And ultimately, I think it's a wonderful example. Loulou by CACHAREL is a wonderful example of an evolution of a fragrance. It is a wonderful, albeit very rare, but a wonderful example of how formulations don't always need to be a bad thing for a fragrance. They can also work out in its favor. Granted, I'll never stress enough to repeat this. In this case, it didn't work in its favor because L'Oreal wanted it to work in its favor. I think it was just a coincidence, but it worked out really well. So there you have it, guys. This is my review of Lulu, the love of my life. I love this perfume so much. Let me hear your thoughts in the chat section. Okay, costume change. Spaceship bottle has arrived. OMG, says Jay. Yes, outfit change. Yes, of course. We're like more in this kind of futuristic darkness. I wanted to change the outfit into the darkness, into the dark. This is the tone for Lulu because of the dry down. Because I was getting to the point where the dry down is that fleshy, rotting soul. That's what Lulu is. And even the advertisements from the 80s are also very dark, very cryptic. Everybody's asking, who is she? Who is she? Who is this Lulu? And then she's like running with these blue lights into these dark crevices of theaters and bars and pubs. And there's darkness surrounding Lulu, a lot of darkness. And you can't catch her, but she is dangerous. That's the 80s Lulu. I heard the Lulu bottle has been inspired by an object in a painting by Matisse, says Hélène. That could very well be. That could very well be. Helen says, I miss Lulu Blue. Lulu Blue is another formulation also of Lulu that was a flanker that is no longer in production. And then there was another one also, was it Vol de Nuit or something? No, Vol de Nuit is another perfume. But something. What was it called? Oh gosh, no, the alcohol-free version of Lulu. In the alcohol-free version of it. Was that Lulu Blue? Well, there are two flankers of Lulu, by the way, but both of them are discontinued. Lulu brings back memories, says Jack. Memories from my childhood growing up in the English countryside, specifically this old sweet shop that had been in my town since the 60s. For some reason, to me, Lulu smells like the powdered blue raspberry bonbons they sold. They would be in these antique glass jars lining the paneled oak walls. Jack, those bonbons are violet bonbons and actually quite famous in France, but also in Great Britain to be had. And the blue of the bottle is the exact same color as the bonbons. Quite a coincidence. I don't live there anymore, but those memories are always flashing in my mind whenever I wear Lulu. Okay, if you're saying that the bonbons had this color, this is violets. In fact, violet is a predominant flower in here, and violet bonbons usually have this color. So this is the violet. Yeah, I think you meant violet bonbons. And in fact, it does have it, but also the modern one is a bit spicier, kind of in the dry down. It's a bit more zesty, but effervescent, bubbly, more champagne-y. And the old formulation goes deep into that rotting, powdery flesh. Love the bottle, so iconic, says Aisha. Robots can be locked on us, looks like a blue highlighter. No disrespect. It looks Art Deco and sci-fi at the same time, says Amina. Yes, it does look like Art Deco and sci-fi at the same time. I love this little... So this is where you would sit. The pilot and the co-pilot sit there. That's the front of this spaceship, and then it flies off, and that's the back. I like Lulu, Daniel says, but I am wondering whether I would like it if I had not been aware that it had superdacob's imprimatur of approval. I am not sure. I mean, it's a conceptual perfume. Another thing, longevity is huge. It's beast, even in the modern day, both versions, obviously. And projection and sillage, amazing. A lot of people are going to say it's too heavy for summer, but I honestly prefer this one in summer. I think in summer, it's amazing. It just blossoms even more in summer than it does in colder months. I like wearing heavy perfumes in summer. I'm not all about this, just refreshing cologne in summer. I also like heavy hitters in summer. I think oftentimes people are scared because obviously in today's day and age, heavy perfumes, you already are scared of them. And then in summer, you think it's even worse. But some of them really bloom in summer. They really bloom. They become so much more when they get a chance with the heat to pop open, you know, and some of those flowers that remain closed and wintered in colder months, you get to smell more the powdery aspect of Lulu. But in summer, oh, she blossoms. You get that jasmine, you get that ylang ylang, you get that tuberose. It's like all about the flowers. Daniel says, I like it more and more. Not so much the first spray, but it becomes much, much nicer as it ages. Also very important to note, Daniel well said, not just does it become better as it develops on your skin, as it goes through the different stages of top notes, you know, mid notes, dry down. But also, let's not forget, give a perfume some time. When you first buy it and it's new, it doesn't have that oxygen in there yet. So when you start using it, as the oxygen starts filling it up, it starts modifying the molecules a little bit, and it heftens the fragrance. So give it some time. You might not like it like the first couple of weeks or months, but keep using it. Let it simmer, you know, let it simmer in your proximity, and it will evolve. It will get heft. And every perfume is like that. I prefer the old version of Lulu. It was far better, says Helen. MK, I'd like to smell the reformulation of Lulu. I used to wear the Voile de Parfum. That's the alcohol-free one. Voile de Parfum, alcohol-free when I was 10. Haha, I still remember the TV commercials. So iconic. Daniel says, MK, I have not smelt the original. Mine is a new one. I really like it. But if I had sniffed it without Dacob's input, I think I would have walked away from it without thinking it through. And also, Daniel, there's a big difference between spraying it from a distance and puddle spraying it. I like to spray it from a distance and just getting that little cloud on your hand. Not like, you know, I call it puddle spraying. When you spray too close to the skin, then it becomes a bit too synthetic. But from a distance, you get that beautiful 80s memory. It just pops it open with spraying it at a distance. Oh, thank you, Tammy Price. Just subscribed. Thank you. Brandon says, I'm sure it's like a ghost of what used to be. It is. Emilia says, but this ghost is way more interesting. Oh, hell yeah, it really is. Melly says, I prefer the vintage, as you know. LOL. Yeah, I know, Melly. Learning to like the new one, step by step. I have never interpreted Lulu as a sci-fi scent. I used to see it more of an interpretation of a coming-of-age French gal, says MK. Brandon says, the bottle is very sci-fi-like. Melly agrees with Hélène that she prefers the original formulation. It is smokier to me and more potent. Robots can be locked on us. Says there's another bottle with a pointy red lid. Yes, that is the Eau de Parfum splash bottle. There is also a pure perfume of Lulu, also in the genie bottle, but instead of the red pointy stopper, it had a gray pointy stopper. Amina O says, who remembers the commercial Lulu? Oui, c'est moi. Yes, I remember it. MK says to Daniel, yes, they were. If you visit duty-free shops, there is still the classic miniature set with Lulu, Trésor, Lorraine. All of those fragrances used to cost the same back then. Oh, Melly, or was Hélène or Melly gutted? Can we go up just a little bit more? Hélène says to Melly, very true, I'm gutted, it does not smell the same. Eden seems to smell as it used to. Eden, huh? You might be onto something. Emilia says, I'm sure Dior made Hypnotic Poison as a shady response to Cacharel's attempt to copy Poison. No, I don't think so. Could you imagine if they made it all about that? No, they wouldn't have waited almost a decade to do it. No, not a decade, 4 or 5 years. But there's that play-doh-y tone touch into it. I mean, Amina says L'Oreal snatched her good, Lulu. Yes, she did. Oh, by the way, I also wanted to show you the difference. They also cut costs on packaging, you see. The current formulation, this is a 30 ml spray box, right? You open it and inside it has the ingredients. Inside of the box, literally you got to break the box to read the ingredients, and as you can see, it's literally a cardboard box without anything inside to protect the bottle. So when you do put the bottle in, it's really, it wobbles in there. Look, there's like, it's really not well protected. Terrible, actually. Very cheap, very cheap. They really cheaped out on the box. It's still glossy-ish. It's a semi-mattified paper. Now, check out the original. First of all, the complexity of how you open the package. It's, wait, let me go to the new one. You see how this single paper, single cardboard lid or whatever fold, done. Now look at the 80s version. Harmonica opening, super complex construction, printed on the inside, painted in this blood rotting flesh red. And it doesn't stop there. We have a whole container for the bottle that protects it in the same color, mind you. Look at that. They managed to equal the color. It's the same burgundy red blood color. And so you put the bottle in here. And then you have your beautiful little harmonica opening. You see, all of this costs to design and costs money. And ultimately, it's the consumer that pays it. Then you... And that's what Lulu used to be. Now, another thing I can show you the difference. So if you want to order it online, secondhand, what have you, there's an easy way to, there's several ways to identify a vintage from a new, in case the seller doesn't say this. But a very simple one is, you see, in the 80s and 90s, the Cacharel logo had a circle around it. It doesn't anymore. they they even cheapened out on that. So they don't have to print the circle anymore. So that even makes it cheaper, right? So circle around the original formulation, CACHAREL logo. No circle around the current day formulation. Plus there's little slight differences, like for example, eau de parfum vaporisateur, the spray is written there. On the new one it doesn't say this, but this sometimes didn't even say it on the older boxes. It's just that this is a 30 ml package. It's a smaller package, so there's kind of less space to print stuff. It's a bit smaller in size. And of course, what changes a lot is the whole description on the packaging of the new formulation. You get all of these modern day symbols, you know, recyclable symbols, how much the product is good for after you open it, blah, 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 what have you. None of this existed in the 80s, as you can see, much cleaner. You know, not many ingredients listed either. So that's a way to see whether or not your Lulu is vintage or not. Then another way to see it is, let me take it out again. I do not have a flashlight here with me now, but that's a pity. I would need a lamp or something. But if you light a flashlight through the bottle, wait, can I get maybe a flash from a phone or something? No, I can't find it. Okay. Well, take your bottles up if you do have it, because take your smartphone or what have you, and just like flash a light through the bottle. You're going to see a difference between the classic and the original formulation and the new formulation. The classic one, because it's also a heavier, thicker glass, it's completely painted through blue. It's a blue glass. It's not just painted on top. It's a colored glass. This one is transparent with a coat of paint on top. That's the new formulation. The new formulation is, you know, so when you project light from the back, this one is going to turn patchy because you're going to see the spray paint job, the lacquer finish of the bottle. You're going to see through it. You're going to see the liquid in there, and it's going to be all patchy. This one is a full solid color. So when you project light from the back, it's just going to result as a blue glass that's being filtered through with light. And it's going to have a nice gradient. You're going to see a nice, beautiful full tone gradient. Here it's going to be a patchy mess. You're going to see the yellow liquid inside and everything. So that's also another way to know which bottle you have in case you don't know. And then of course the stickers at the bottom, because you do have this silver sticker for the original version of Lulu with the text on it. And then modern day Lulu has a transparent sticker with silver text on it and the white printed badge code. I can tell you the badge code of my current formulation of Lulu, 38S400C. Now it's going to be really hard to see on camera because it's a very, very tiny thing, but it's that white thing down there. Okay, back to the chats. To me, Lulu not like Poison at all, but now I see why I love both, says Melly. Yeah, they're very similar. MK, Emilio, my mother and I used to wear them both in the 1980s, and I couldn't see how they were similar. Lulu is more similar to Angel or Courant d'A by Agnes B, but I have to retry it. Aisha says, I have not smelled Lulu for a long time. Really need to smell it now. And it's a cheapie nowadays. You can get it for a really good price. And Emilio is so right when he says we all smell things differently. Debbie says, I don't even know what niche is anymore except overpriced. Debbie, you're so right. Niche is overpriced. It has nothing to do with the quality anymore. It's just about self-celebratory overindulgence of being able to say, oh, did you, like name dropping in the art world. Oh, do you know that artist? Do you know him? Oh, he just joined that gallery. He just got a show there. Oh, yes, I met him, or blah, blah, blah. Same with niche, to be able to say like, oh, did you smell that niche brand that I just like discovered? And like, I'm the first one to know about it. There's that bitter aftertaste in the niche world that is kind of becoming a lot, much about showing off that you know some niche product rather than really enjoying it. And I don't like that. I don't like name dropping. Lulu is, Melly says, Lulu is in a league of its own. Nothing like it. Niche is the new drugstore, says Emilio. So right. And spread the shade. Spread the shade. MK says, I agree, Dacob. Niche perfumes are reminiscent of the 1980s perfumes with 1980s formulations. Smoky Nokin 66, how you doing, sweetie? Also in the 80s, some expensive ingredients were allowed to be exported, and now they're not allowed. So true. That is true too. Scrolling through to find more Lulu comments. There's no difference between niche and mainstream as of now, MK, says Emilio. Most niche perfumes suck, says Robert. Dennis says, the good old days, which were often not so good. I do still have an occasional cigarette, but definitely not habitually. And it was awful the way everyone had this, everywhere had the stench of smoke. Yeah, but everybody was used to it. Nobody really smelled it. Now everybody's annoyed by it. I'm annoyed by it. Smoking. Wish there were body products available still. Oh my gosh. Body products of number 19 would be amazing. Of Lulu. Yes. Just take a look at niche houses like Roja, I still don't know, this is Roja Dove or Roja Dove, who pretty much copies powerhouse chypres from the 70s and 80s and sells them for €2,500. That's niche to me nowadays. Helen says, very true, Dacob. Olfactive stories. Yes, that's true. Amen, M, says Debbie to Emilio. Smoking Oaken. Remember CACHAREL, 1970s. Remember CACHAREL, Anaïs. Oh my God, used to love that. Oh, Melly loves Anaïs. Anaïs to me is very 70s. I respect it a lot, but I do not wear it. Dondism says, not in mine. I genuinely seek out feedback from my co-workers under my leadership. They really help the team. Well, if you're the leader of the team, you can definitely instill a different work environment and work culture. But if you have people on top of you who are totally zombies, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Oh, Lulu original sounds dark, says Aisha. It's so dark. It's very dark, the original Lulu. Melly says it is dark. Debbie says Estee Lauder is an underrated fragrance brand. Their gems are from the past. Smoking Oak says, oh my God, my mom used to wear Knowing. Oh, if I smell it, I start bawling. I miss her. I hated the scent of Knowing though, LOL, but scent evokes emotion. Oh, so sweet. Thank you for sharing with us. Even CACHAREL fashion brand, so this is MK saying, had fallen into oblivion. I loved it when Atsuro Tayama or Clemens Ribeiro were the artistic directors 20 and 15 years ago. I recently purchased, okay, Brandon says, I recently purchased Decema by Revlon. I'm butchering the name. The same perfume Rosemary wears in Rosemary's Babies. I got the perfume pen. Ooh, loving it. A bit of horror and tension in there. Always good in perfumes. Dondism, same thoughts on the niche world. I can't stand it, LOL. Brandon says, pretentious. Some things never change. Rara Avis, how you doing, sweetie? Lots of new niche houses are straight copying major designer bestsellers. What's the point anymore? It's just money. Also because they've realized that a lot of people who have no character whatsoever feel better about themselves if they can tell other people about knowing something that other people might not know. Like, oh, did you hear about this perfume I just discovered? It's niche. It just came out. You know, there's that whole snobby attitude that follows niche, which, ugh, I can't. I can't. Newer packaging is more environmentally friendly though, so less packaging. Not always better, but the trend to help the planet. Well, my dear, you're right to a certain degree, but this is biodegradable paper in both cases. We're not talking plastic here. The plastic is covering the new, just like the old one was covered. I have a still sealed bottle of the 50 ml, by the way. So they both come wrapped in plastic, but the rest, it's paper. So it's not environmentally unfriendly. So in that respect, the new and the old bottle, there's not a... Besides, when it comes to me, when I do get my hands on an original packaging, I will preserve it. Oh, what is that? Super chat. Oh, super chat. Thank you so much. Robert, thank you, Robert, for the super chat. Thank you. Aisha says, regarding the question about the Matisse painting, apparently, the bottle being inspired by Matisse, apparently, it was inspired by the colors of Obelisk with red trousers from 1921. Ooh, let me Google that. Obelisk with red trousers. Cha, let's Google it. I'm not going to Google it, you guys, because it's copywritten. I can't show it. Anyway, Google it yourselves. People should stop wearing their perfumes, says just another Roger. People should stop wearing their perfumes for others. Love yourself. It is always about you. Might as well spray it to the person in front of you in that case. Sue Lulu, not me. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, you're going to the office and let's say you're wearing Lulu and then your co-workers are like, oh my God, Dacob, like I can't stand it. Stop it with this. And I'm like, it's not my fault. Sue Lulu. That's so cool. It's the perfume. Smoky Noken says, newer packaging is more environmentally friendly, right? Not tough, so less packaging. Not always better, but the trend to help the planet. All right, I already read that comment. Dacob, CACHAREL cheaped out on the box because the actual product, unlike other brands, hasn't gone through various price increases in many decades. That is true. However, we must also say that they have not invested a penny in commercials for it. Big brands that have their best sellers, they keep promoting them. I mean, look what Chanel does with number 5 every Christmas. Multi-million-dollar budgets for commercials to revamp the name, to revamp the memory of the fragrance in people's minds. So they're not investing a penny. They have already, this is where it's at, you guys. Lulu, the investment that CACHAREL / L'Oreal made in the 80s to launch it, to produce it, to make it, that money has been earned back and then some throughout the decades. Now it's just topping. Whatever they sell now is just extra because they have the bottles. I mean, the whole design, everything is set in play. It's a really quick production and zero money is spent on promoting it. Zero. So of course they've maximized profits to the utmost degree, you guys. It's not like they're just launching this perfume now, you know. This is you have to think of it long term. Within 30, 40 years of the existence of this fragrance, they have already earned the investment they made into it, and now they're just paying to get the bottles and the fragrance made, and then packaging, and then they sell it. But zero money other than that is spent in this fragrance. So they are also spending less to make it, is what I'm trying to tell you. Yes, they're not asking us for more money for it, but they're also spending less to produce it than they used to in the past. That old box is lovely, Aisha, Aisha says. And I have to say, it is lovely. It's just so clever. And it's unnecessary, but it's a beautiful, I don't know, I love the fact that it opens up like a flower, you know? It's like the petals of a flower. It literally goes like that. It opens up like a flower, and then you pull out the bottle. I mean, it is beautiful. Somebody designed this. And the print of the flowers just goes around the whole thing. Really, super chat from Dondism. Thank you so much, Dondism. Thank you. Aisha says, it's like the burgundy of the inside of a Chanel bag. You might be onto something too, dear. There's going to be a Chanel topic tonight, let me tell you. So, Lulu, yeah. That's the advantage of teleworking nowadays. We can wear whatever we want at home. I love that. Yeah. Lol, I will try it again next time I go in the store. Lulu, spray fracas at the office and get fired immediately, says Amelia. Yeah, fracas is a hit or miss with people. I wear whatever I want whenever I want, says Brendan. Well said. And with that, I would like to thank you for this review, for reviewing it with me. And here's a little surprise for you. Next live stream, we might just announce it now. We're going to review another little CACHAREL. Oh yes, that's why I mentioned before. I was like, somebody was onto something. I think Hélène mentioned Eden by CACHAREL. So look at this beautiful, majestic bottle. Oh, the love of my life. This is a factice, a ginormous 1 liter factice bottle of Eden with a marbled green glass. This is going to be, oh, I love it. This is going to be the review for next live stream, you guys. So get your Edens or Edens by CACHAREL out. The original formulation, but also the current formulation. We are going to go deep, deep into the forests of the forbidden fruit. We're going to go into paradise. There's going to be trouble. There's going to be a lot of trouble. Special thanks to my supporters. Here you go, guys. This is the list. As the list is running, thank you so much. You can consider subscribing to my channel, but also joining and becoming a member or a patron. You get extra perks by joining, becoming a member or a patron. If you're a member on my YouTube channel, you get to use special icons, emojis. You get a badge of honor that fills up, a bottle of perfume that fills up the more you remain a patron, and you get to see videos before they hit YouTube, as well as ad-free videos, but also exclusive videos that only come to Patreon and to my members. By the way, the exclusive podcast, the latest exclusive podcast is now up, so you could hear that. It's a 1 hour long video about perfumes and Carl Jung and a little bit of esotericism there as well, and Ima Sumac. Next time we're going to review Eden, so stay tuned for that, because this one, let me tell you, there is, if Lulu, let's just put it this way, if Lulu has, in 1987 when it came out, if Lulu delivers in the dry down a bit of that hint of rotting flesh, well, in the 90s, Guichard returns with Eden and delivers the rotting flesh upped by 100, and takes us from a vision of Eden, the paradise, the Garden of Eden, takes us from the vision of the paradise of Eden into Eden, catapults us there in CinemaScope and full colors, full colors. We're going full on Technicolor into Eden next live stream. So get your bottles ready. This is also a cheapie, relatively considered a cheapie. I mean, you could get 30 ml for 15 to 20 bucks. So I'm thinking it's a good one to review in case you want to review it with me, smell it while I review it. It's not one that's going to break the bank completely, thank God. But and also it's a wonderful perfume. Does the reformulation hold up to the original? Stay tuned to find out. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the review of Lulu. I don't know, it's always a wonderful experience for me to review a fragrance, because it just gives me life, you know, to smell these perfumes. As delicate or as rough as they can be. Same fragrance, different decade. Thank you guys so much for watching. Follow me on Instagram if you haven't already, superdacob all spelled together. I also have 2 Chanel Instagram profiles. One called Coco Chanel is in my house, all about Chanel of today, the brand, and Coco Chanel Privé, all spelled together, all about the Chanel of yesteryear when Coco was still alive. Until next time, never forget to never give up on love. Love you all. See you soon. Take care. Bye. Mwah.